time to response is psychologically more powerful than time to resolution.
Man, that's so important.
The fact that you need to know something and how can I learn it is the one that nags at you, not whether you get an answer in 1 day versus 2 days.
You talk about it privately, we talk about it publicly. This is the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. Welcome again to the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. I'm your host, James Twiggins, along with my tequila drinking partner, Mr. Keith Robinson.
It's whiskey.
Talk to us about our guest today, Mr. Jay Baer, international speaker and author, 7 books or something at this point.
I think it's 8.
Is it 8?
We'll link to him in the show notes. Yeah, it was great. I mean, he's a marketing genius, truly. He's built multiple companies with that genius. We covered the gambit from how to sell a domain name for 50 beers, how to make good content for the consumer, the difference between customer experience and customer service, how Jay would approach real estate if he was in business, moving from instinct to data, how important speed and the power of speed is.
Responsiveness, yeah.
Yeah, and he talked about a Got It audit, which I had never heard of and is worth listening to. You got to listen to the end for that.
It was awesome. It was a
thoughtful,
really cool
smart,
show.
hilarious guy. Enjoy it, kids. Put it in your ears.
Jay, welcome to the podcast. We are excited to talk to you about a lot of stuff today.
Tequila.
Our original conversation before you showed up in the green room was me asking Keith if he wanted to do a shot of tequila.
No, the answer is no.
No, you used an F-bomb no, but you just didn't want it. You did, yeah.
Yeah, but the answer was a firm no.
I'm definitely game, and if I move my camera just slightly, you would be astonished how much tequila is in this office right now.
Well,
we are recording this at 9 a.m. where I am sitting. I am not doing a tequila shot.
If you want to be weak like that, Keith, that's you.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a man that I've ever heard.
Okay, tough guys.
This company wasn't built. This company wasn't built on limits. It was built on being limitless.
Relax. Everybody's talking tough when you're far away from me.
I have tried to climb that mountain, Jay, many times, and I've succeeded once. The first time that Keith and I actually ever hung out, I won that challenge, and every single time since, I have lost that challenge.
You did win the first time, though. That was brutal.
That was a brutal time. So
brutal hangover.
This is not about alcohol, ironically. We're not here to talk about it, although we do want to talk a little bit about it.
Sure.
So, anyways, Jay, it's good to see you again, my friend.
See you guys.
Excited to go through a lot of discussion today. So for people that don't know you, which would be very few, but for those that don't, love to have you just share real quick your background, just how you got where you are. I know you're a very famous international speaker and author. So just give a little bit of background and then we'll dive into a few rapid fire questions.
Yeah, thanks. It didn't make any sense as I was doing it, but it makes sense now, I think. I started in politics. I was a political campaign consultant. I used to do all the direct mail for Senator John McCain. I'm from Arizona originally, so I used to work a lot for the senator, and then got out of politics because it's not a great place to make an actual living, and got into what we would now consider to be sort of traditional marketing. And I did that for a little bit, and then I worked for the government for about 20 minutes and realized that was not really the entrepreneurial culture for me. And I started my first internet company in 1993 with some friends of mine from college. I was literally working for the Arizona Department of Juvenile Corrections, giving tours of prison. And I thought, I don't love this. And I went out with some friends and they said, hey, we've started the first internet company in Arizona and we don't know anything about marketing or communications. Isn't that what you do? I said, yes, that is what I do. But when you say the word internet, I don't actually know what you mean, because this was 1993. This is when it was AOL was the safe way to get on the internet. And the idea that you would just, put in a 14-inch floppy disk into your computer and get on the open internet.
For those of you under the age of 30, a floppy disk is this device, never mind. You can look it up on Wikipedia.
Yeah, Google it.
Before that, we used cassette tapes, which was wild.
It was anyway. So I got involved really early. I think you guys know this story. We were so early that we sold the domain name Budweiser.com to Anheuser-Busch for 50 cases of beer. That was the actual sale. This is totally true.
Shut up. He said that's
100% true.
I mean, that was
wow
charitable of you. Charitable of you.
Nobody even had websites then. We thought we got a smoking deal. We're like, you're going to give us 50 cases of beer?
That's like that story when you listen to Matt Damon talk about how he turned down the main role for Avatar.
Yeah. No, exactly. The best part about that story, and this is 1,000% accurate, in the actual contract, which was negotiated by a professional attorney, it calls out very specifically bottles, not cans. Because, we got to keep it classy.
Right.
That
anyway,
is great.
I've been doing this for a while, and since then I've had a series of professional services firms, primarily working with very, very large companies, as it turns out, all around the world on digital marketing strategy, customer experience strategy, customer service strategy, business growth strategy. Along the way, I started one of the most popular marketing blogs in the world. I've written 7 books, have done hundreds and hundreds of podcast episodes, and all the other things. And so now I spend a lot of my time giving presentations, so traveling around and working with great organizations like yours to talk about how to gain a sustainable business advantage. And then as we touched on briefly, my side hustle is I'm now the number 2 tequila influencer in the world. And so I make 25 videos a month about tequila. And I just started a new podcast called The Spirit Guides, which interviews other people who are booze influencers.
Well, we'll put that in the show notes. Keith is the number 2 consumer of whiskey in the world.
Fact. Yeah.
If you wanted to, just to claim titles here. So.
Next episode of the show is you might know him, that one dude Ryan, who is an awesome whiskey influencer. He's going to the next episode on the podcast.
Yeah.
Well, that is. I'm sorry. Out of everything you said, I loved all of it, but I still can't get over the fact that 50 cases of beer for Budweiser.com. That's like a whole book in itself. On
I have more of the story. So, because they were free, right? You could just get whatever domain name you wanted. They were free. So we registered a bunch of them. We sold Guinness.com a year later. We weren't that stupid. 2 trips to Ireland is what we sold that one for.
All right.
And then at one point I was on vacation. And the lesson here is never vacation during a startup phase. I went on vacation and my partner registered some domain names without my name on them because he's like, yeah, Jay's not here. And again, at the time, I can't emphasize this enough. This had no value, right?
Yeah,
this was
meaningless.
like, it was some sort of crazy, prototype. And one of the domain names that he registered without me was beer.com. You can see a theme of the registrations. And years later, he sold that to Molson for $5.2 million. And just retired and is now a city council person in Colorado. And here I am doing your fucking podcast. So, so that's the lesson. That's the lesson.
Man, that's the Matt Damon lesson on. I turned down Avatar. I just wasn't into it. And you're like, what?
Well, we'll send him a little handwritten note thanking him for screwing you out of that $5 million.
Yep.
That's a good one. That's
the only other one that's more interesting to me is trying to imagine you working in government.
Yeah, that's funny.
It was a short duration.
It
didn't take me long. I was like, wait, everybody is like at 5 o'clock. It was, when I say stampede, I literally mean stampede to the elevators. Like the second it hit 5, that place ghost town. And I was like,
ghost town.
Like, this is it? Like, it was just a different, it's just a different work culture for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, we got 2 rapid fires. Keith will start us off.
Other than the various podcasts we're all associated with, what's your favorite book or podcast, either this year, ever, lately, whatever?
Yeah, there's a new one I really like from Dan Heath, who's a terrific speaker and author as well. He and his brother Chip have written some great books. Made to Stick is probably their most famous book. He has a new podcast called What It's Like to Be. And every week he interviews somebody about their job. So one week is a real estate agent. One week is a TV weather person. One week is, a forensic accountant. And he's a really good interviewer, and the shows are crisp. They're like 28 minutes, something like that. It's just a really nice listen. So I'm enjoying that show a lot.
Awesome.
I love it. All right. So I can't wait for this answer. So if you could have lunch with someone current or historical, who would it be and why?
I'm really fortunate in that I've had the chance to be around a lot of, what people would consider to be sort of famous folks and work with many of them on stage, etc. Probably my brother. My brother was everything that I am times two, smarter, funnier, better looking, more interesting. Unfortunately passed away like 10 years ago when he was 40. So I really miss him a lot. And so I would take advantage of that opportunity if I could.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. I would have loved to have met him, by the way, because
he was something for sure.
Yeah, if he's more than you, then holy shit,
a lot more. Yeah.
Wow.
That's yeah.
All right, so let's dive in because I want to get into the most important question. So, talk to us about your obsession with tequila. We'll start there, and for the viewers and listeners, we're going to go deep in a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
But you are a connoisseur of tequila. How the hell did that start besides business causing you to drink? And and how big is the collection? Like, give us a little background and then we'll go into some serious questions.
It's probably more a fascination than an obsession. And it was a slow build over time. So I'm from Arizona originally and went to school in Tucson near the border. And so you sort of get enveloped in that Latino culture there more so than if I grew up in Vermont or something, clearly.
Right.
But when I was in my late 20s. Yeah, that's right. Just before I started having children, my good friend Tom Brecky and I would go every Wednesday to a restaurant in Scottsdale. It's still there, called Los Sombreros. And there's a bartender there named Steve. And Steve was super early into agave spirits before it was at all a thing. Again, we're talking about, this is 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so we'd go every Wednesday, sit at the bar, have tacos, and be like, okay, Steve, church is in session, teach us something new. And he'd pull a dusty bottle that he pulled back from, somewhere and say, well, here's what this one's all about and how it's made. And it was just so fascinating. And I'm not anti-whiskey, I'm not anti-vodka, gin, rum. It's just, for me, tequila in particular can have so many different flavors from the same plant. And some of that's based on how they ferment it. Some of it's based on barrel aging, etc. It is, in my estimation, the most versatile spirit. And then the community of producers is so awesome. I mean, there's only 150 distilleries. Many of them are related. It's a very small geographic region as well. So once I started going down there and visiting producers and learning more and reading books and all that, you just sort of go down the rabbit hole as you do with any passion. And so I've always been interested in it and started collecting a while ago. But it was just 2 years ago when I stopped my previous podcast that I'm like, oh, I should take some of the time I used to spend on the podcast and maybe I'll just try to make some videos about tequila. So I just made some videos randomly on Instagram and TikTok, and then it went bang, 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 bang. And now it's like truly a business. Like I have staff, the whole thing, and sponsors and clients. And we do a lot of tequila marketing consulting now and the whole thing. So it's
how
really,
big is the collection? How big is it?
It's not as big as you would think because I don't really collect. Like I'm not, same thing with wine. I've got a wine cellar and all that, but I'm not like, let's lay this down for 9 years. I'm a drinker, not a collector.
Good man.
So I give away a lot of tequila too. All my neighbors, I live right next to a university. So all my neighbors are students. So anything I don't like, I'm like, hey, drink, just take this. I am Seth Rogen in the neighborhood for sure. So I have actually, I just looked it up the other day because I was trying to convince my wife to let me get more shelves unsuccessfully.
Yeah, I was going to say, good luck.
I think I've got like 400. I think I like 400 at home, something like that.
That's not small, man. That's a thing.
Much bigger collections than that.
I have a follow-up question though. So it started as an interest, maybe developed into a passion or something that you were curious. You were curious about it.
For sure.
You enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of people who have things that they're interested and passionate about and maybe want to, everyone's trying to figure out a side hustle nowadays, I guess. But like, at what point did you know, oh, wow, this could be a business? Like you started it, I think it's important to note, you started it from a pure place of curiosity, right?
Yeah.
And then it took off, right? But you weren't doing it to build I guess I should ask it as a question. Did you start out trying to say, I'm going to be a tequila influencer? Or did you start out trying to say, I like tequila and I'm going to talk about it?
Yeah, the latter for sure. Although it would be perhaps overly modest to suggest that my 20 years of creating successful
Right.
content across every conceivable format. Like I know how to make content work. I owned a content marketing agency. Like I feel like episodic content in particular. I mean, I have run 8 or 9 podcasts now in my career. So that whole idea of like, okay, every day we have to make new content and make it good, and how do you keep the audience involved? Like that mechanic was pretty easy for me.
Yeah, sure.
I will say this though. I talked about this on a show a while back. The difference between making B2B content, right, for business people, like as I've done my whole career, and B2C content like tequila is pretty different.
How so?
The attention span's way shorter. Especially now, like I was used to doing podcasts and books and webinars and blog posts, and now I'm doing 57-second videos on
Reels.
TikTok, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just you have to get over your desire to talk about all the things. It's like you can talk about one thing in this video, and if you have something else to say, that's a different video. So that muscle I had to develop, and then I will also say, people are friggin' mean. Like, when you're just a guy that pops up in their feed, like there is no holds barred. Like I'll tell you this.
It's the greatest thing ever, dude. Keith and I will call each other
are like insane.
Even on a real estate podcast, like the comments, Keith and I, we have pretty tough skin. We don't really care. And we'll call each other once in a while, be like, you got to read the shit that people write.
Yeah. It's so funny. And we definitely get, it's not as bad as it used to be. I think the algorithm sort of steered people, either to or away from our content. But when I first started out, and my partner Maddie, who's on all the videos with me, or most of them, we would get a lot of like, who are these, gringos telling us to drink how to drink tequila? We'd get a lot of hate from Mexico, etc. And we still get yelled at for mispronouncing. Like neither of us speak Spanish very well, and so we get yelled at for mispronouncing bottles and things like that. So it can be. One time I got this guy's too fat to listen to. That was fun. We
call them, Jay, we call them keyboard warriors. And as Keith puts it,
I wrote a whole book about it, right? So
nobody would say shit if it was in person. They wouldn't say anything because they'd get knocked the F out right then and there. But on the keyboard, say whatever they want.
I wrote a whole book about that, so we can talk about it.
Yeah, my favorite one I've gotten, it was just a semi-recent one. I posted some content and some guy goes, do you ever think about not making stupid videos and focus on running your company? And so I was like, was that guy an investor? Was that a B round of VC? Yeah. What's hilarious is I was like, so I just responded because every once in a while I like to have fun, right? So I just responded. I was like, "Yeah, sometimes." He was just like, "Cheers," and that was it. They just all went away.
You're not wrong, Dad.
Well, yeah. You're not wrong, Dad.
Well, let's dive into some depth here, because Keith, kick us off here because I know some of these questions are really
you've written a lot of books.
Just terrible. Yeah, great.
And because I wrote them, they're terrible. No, but you've written literally multiple books on. The customer experience specifically and like how to exceed expectations. And what is, let's just start at the beginning. What is customer experience expert? How is that different than a customer service focused? Like what's the like, what is that?
The way we typically define it in that side of sort of the business world is that customer service starts when the customer experience fails. So customer experience is sort of a proactive set of policies, procedures, decisions that you make in your business that should optimize all the things that customers care about: speed, personalization, efficiency, ease, empathy. Like all of those ingredients are what you're trying to get right. When it doesn't go right, that's when customer service has to jump in and be like, hey, sorry, this isn't what you wanted it to be, but here's how you can make that better. So they're definitely related. But if you think of anything made with agave is a mezcal, technically. Tequila is a form of mezcal. Customer experience is all of the customer touch points. Customer service is one of them.
Gotcha. Yes. And if you do the customer experience part really well, you don't have to lean on the customer service part as heavily, right?
I mean, quite literally, if you're really good at customer experience, you should have to invest less in customer service.
Right.
If people are fully informed and everything's easy peasy, like, what are you going to bitch about?
You're not servicing anything. You're just delivering the experience. It's
Let me tie that a little bit to our industry. You're obviously acutely aware of all the craziness going on in residential real estate.
Yes.
So big changes ahead. And as I think about the customer experience, I mean, that seems to be really where our industry has got to make some massive changes. If the consumers are questioning, why I pay you and I didn't know this was what it was, like the fact that people don't know how an agent was compensated is just like the first problem that we have to solve. Yeah. So just along those lines, like where do you think things are going to go? And then what does the industry need to start doing so that, to your point, it's less about customer service and more about the experience?
Well, I think partially it's just really understanding and documenting what are all the key touch points in the experience. And I think most agents know them anecdotally, right? And if, they just kind of have a sense of it, but it's not, but it's not really written down. Like, so what we would recommend in my previous consulting firm is to do some customer journey mapping. Right. Which is where you say, okay, what are all the different places where we could or should or might interact with clients, either buyers or sellers, et cetera. And then let's figure out what is the best possible scenario for that interaction, and then really map that out and say, okay, how are we doing versus that ideal state? And then what's the gap analysis that you can then use to get better at those pieces? And most people don't actually do that. They don't write it down. They're just like, yeah, and then if somebody wants to go on a tour of some houses, here's how we do it. And it's like, okay, but that's not really like a process. And if you want to be the best in business, and you're lucky because that you guys are headed that direction, not only as an organization, but with your incredible cast of characters there, you have to, at some point, go from instinct to data. Like you can be good running your business on anecdotes, but you can't be great. And a collection of anecdotes is not data. It's just stories that you've chosen to tell over and over. So eventually you need to write some shit down and figure out like, okay, like what are we actually doing? Not what do we say we're doing? What are we actually doing? And that's how you really get great at the customer experience. The one advantage that you have in your industry is that there isn't much differentiation from brand to brand in the category. You're certainly, that's kind of your thing. Sure. It's like we are different, and that's amazing because you couldn't throw a 12-inch piece of fabric over everybody else's logos and tell nobody knows what the difference is. Nobody knows the differences between any of the other brands. So the fact that you even want to be different is half the fight has been won.
So go ahead, Keith. I was going to do a follow-up on that, but go.
Well, I'm doing a follow-up too. I think that transition moving from instinct to data, I think is really interesting. I jotted that down the instant you said it. I think you can build a somewhat successful real estate business on instinct, right?
For sure.
You can sell some number of houses.
No doubt.
But if you're stuck, whether you're running a brokerage or you're an individual agent, if you're stuck in your growth, it's because you're stuck, in my opinion, in instinct.
Yeah.
If someone wanted to start this moving to data, it might feel too big a task to go, let me map the entire buyer customer journey. Could they find 2 or 3 really important touchstones and start there?
Yeah. And there definitely are, in your world, key intersections that have disproportionate importance to the customer or client psychology, right? So it both on the buy side and the sell side. And that's what I would do is say, okay, you can't get better at everything at once. Let's figure out the 3-4 that really, really matter that either make us money or save us money or both. And let's get, disproportionately good at those individuals. And then once you got that dialed in, then you go to the rest.
Do the next 4.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that you brought this up as just we're talking through this, the experience of a real estate transaction. We know it's murky and it's messy and it's, what we do is the same across real estate brands for sure. It's fairly similar, but no real estate transaction is the same, as you know. There's some fundamentals that follow, but like the process can be a mess depending upon lots of circumstances. And I think about what you're saying, the customer doesn't know what's happening. They're confused. They're concerned. They've got anxiety. The agent's been doing this for their whole career. Is they feel their job is to shelter them from all of that.
Yes, that's such a good point.
But the reality is that's not necessarily what is the best. That's not necessarily the best way to handle it, because if you're not addressing the experience with the client, what they're feeling at the time, that can be an issue. And I make this comment a lot. If they don't know what the hell you're doing, they start to question what you're providing as a service, because I've been saying forever, we're too good at our jobs. Like, we actually need to bring them into the process a lot more. So they go, oh shit, this is actually way more complicated than I thought it was.
This idea that let's not show the sausage being made because that's our job. And if you provide that level of granularity to the buyer or seller, that's just going to annoy, distract, confuse them. I think that is yesterday's thinking in every possible way. At one point, I would have agreed with it for sure. I don't agree with it now, because we live in an era where almost everything that we participate in now informs us a lot more than it used to.
Sure.
You've heard me talk about this, right?
Uber.
DoorDash, Uber, Domino Pizza Tracker, right? I get like 17 push notifications for one pizza. Like, I know everything about all
every
the things.
Putting the pepperonis on now, Jay.
Okay, cool. Like,
but
that's awesome.
Just going further, when you some car companies now, when you order your car and you spec it, they give you an update, and they actually have cameras in the factory to show you where your car is going down the production line.
So it happened to me. It happened to me the other day. I was combining two things, and I bought some sneakers online, some cool leather sneakers, but I'd been drinking tequila before I bought them, and why that matters is I get the email confirmation. Hey, Jay, thanks very much for getting these sneakers from Beckett Simonson. They should be to your house in approximately 8 weeks. And I was like, what? And then I looked a little deeper, and I'm like, oh, they're making these shoes. They're not, they have to make them. And I was like, oh, somehow I missed that in my tequila haze. And I was going to cancel it, but I'm like, I don't need shoes immediately. Let's just ride this out.
You'll still have feet in 8 weeks.
Baby.
And every Wednesday, I got a very detailed email from from Bob or whatever there. And it's like, okay, this week we're doing the last. And here's Manuel at our factory in Peru. And he's been doing this for years. And here's a video of him making this. I got an eight newsletter sequence that described exactly how these shoes are being made. And it was awesome. It was awesome. So this idea of the uncertainty gap, you got to close that down. The uncertainty gap is so huge in real estate. We don't know what the hell's going on. We have no idea. Right.
All right. So I want to push back on this just a little bit. Not actually because I don't agree, but if all three of us agree, this is a boring podcast, right?
Whatever.
So when I go out to a nice restaurant, I don't want the waiter to tell me, the kitchen's super backed up, and we got our B team chef, not our A team chef, right? Like, I just want a great experience. So how do you reconcile those two things? Because there's a lot of inertia in a service business to just curate the experience, right? I mean, you've even talked about this in some of your books and that sort of thing. So how do those two things collide and you end up doing it right?
Yeah. You want to set expectations. That's perhaps the most important part of it. Because if you don't set expectations, the client will always expect everything to happen instantly.
Right.
Because we're in a world now where many things happen instantly or near instantly that used to take days, weeks, or months. Like my wife and I were watching TV the other day, and Cher came on. And I asked her, hey, how old is Cher? She's like, I don't know. Old. And so I just said, Siri, how old is Cher? And Cher is 78 years old. And has a great plastic surgeon, evidently.
No, I feel old.
But I said to her, as I do, because this is just how I think, I'm like, how long would it have taken us to learn how old Cher was before we had the internet? And I realized that you would have had to get in your car, drive to a library, meet with a reference librarian who might have a book on actors and their ages. And then you'd look it up and you'd figure out that it was, 78 years old. And so I assumed let's say 2 hours. It would take 2 hours to learn how old Cher is. And you guys are old enough to remember this. You know what we did back then? Somebody would ask us how old Cher is. We'd say, here's what we'd say. It was amazing times. I don't know.
Yeah.
And that was an acceptable answer. Like, I don't know was always an acceptable response, and it's not anymore, right? The real
expert would say, I don't know, she's probably in her 70s, right? Like that would be the expert.
Nailed it. Yeah. So now everybody expects everything to happen instantly. So you have to set expectations and say, okay, this is going to take approximately this long, and here's why. And this is so obvious, but I'm going to repeat it because it doesn't happen in the real world. You have to condition yourself to under-promise and over-deliver. And in real estate, we make the mistake of doing it the opposite, because we don't want to disappoint the client, right? So we say, oh, we can get this done by Tuesday, knowing full well it's not going to be done by Tuesday, but we tell them Tuesday because we don't want to deal with an unhappy client then. We'd rather kick the can down the curb and deal with an unhappy client later. Stop doing that, because all you're doing is concentrating the unhappiness. You're much better disappointing them slightly now than way more later, and that's just a way of doing business that will actually help you a lot if you stick to it.
Especially in our industry, because I see real estate professionals are such optimists, right? You have to you wake up every day and you have no idea where your next paycheck's going to come from, but you know for damn sure where your next bill is going to come from because they keep rolling in, right? So you have to have tremendous optimism. So they'll think, well, if everything goes right, and I will just put my will on it and I'll make it go right, this will be done in 3 days. But nothing ever goes perfect, right? And so instead of saying 4 days or 5 days and building yourself in a little hedge, and then it gets done in 3.5 and you look like a hero, that's right intentioned, right?
Yes.
It comes from the right place, but it ends up causing more problems than it, like you said, under promise and over. When you
overpromise or you optimistically quote a timeline, the best you can possibly do is meet expectations.
Right.
That's the best case scenario.
Yeah. You're right.
So why would you do that? Like, so a good friend of mine is an airline pilot for American. And he's a genius at this. So every time he's on the headset and air traffic control is like, yeah, there's a plane behind you. You can't back out. It's going to be an 11-minute delay. He gets on the head, says, oh, it's Captain Mendler. Welcome to American Airlines Flight 1240 from Phoenix to Philadelphia. Unfortunately, there's a plane behind us. I'm told by ATC it's going to be about a 13-minute delay. And then he backs out in 10 minutes. Great news. We're leaving 3 minutes early, right? And people love him. He's like a hero, right? And all you got to do, you just change that expectation curve slightly.
So let's piggyback on that, because you talk about speed and responsiveness a lot. Yeah. And I think that it's a setting expectation. And then the thing that our industry is really bad at is responsiveness. Like, especially with, and I think there's also an element, and you can dig deep into this, about consumer expectation in this world where we just want everything now. Like, how would you recommend that people think about that, especially if, agents are with clients, they're tied up, they don't want to leave their client to go answer a phone call. Like, what's your take on all of that?
Man, I got a lot of takes. So I've written 7 books. Every single one of them has at least a section on speed and responsiveness. It's the only thing I've talked about my entire career. And it's for 2 reasons. One, it's the one element of the customer experience that you have complete control over.
Facts.
And 2,
it's so true.
It's the one element of the customer experience where expectations consistently escalate.
Yeah. Yeah, even compound. Exactly. They almost compound, totally. Right?
Like, nobody ever says, hey, you know what? Next time, I've been thinking, next time, why don't you guys do this more slowly?
Right.
Like, never. Nobody ever says that, right? So
I can think of a couple examples. Never mind.
It's a different show. So, people want things, it just, what was fast 5 years ago is positively slow today. And that trend is never going to stop. And in fact, if anything, that trend is going to accelerate because of AI. I actually have a brand new keynote just launching today, as a matter of fact, all about sort of practical AI and how to really do it in a sort of small, medium-sized business environment, not get seduced by all the, shiny objects, but like the real deal. And the big implication for AI is not going to be, I can make a blog post in 5 seconds. Like, who fucking cares? The real implications are that customers are going to be trained that everything can happen faster.
Yeah.
And if you can't get there, like what's your excuse now? So to your point, James, you don't want to leave your client to talk to another client. So here's how you do it. There's a an accounting firm in Indianapolis near me that is great at this, and I love this example. They're not dissimilar from a lot of real estate agencies. They do small business tax returns, personal returns. They have 2 partners, 2 principals, an associate, and then like 2 admins, right? So there's 5 people. Number 1, they have 75 Google reviews. So I just want you to think about that. I have had 10 accountants in my long business career. I have never left a Google review for an accountant.
Ever.
Because what is the review going to say? Check this out. Got my tax return back. All the numbers added up, 5 stars. But why would you write a review? They have 75
They got me
Google
a massive
reviews.
refund. IRS, come audit me.
Come audit me.
Right.
Every one of the reviews, or at least like 80% of the reviews, specifically mentions how fast they are. Here's their policy. 5-minute response time.
Yes.
Phone and email. 5 minutes. That's their SLA. So if one person's on the phone, the other one takes it. If they're both on the phone, the admin takes it. If they're all 3 on the phone, they literally have a contact tree, just like car dealers do or anybody else, and if everybody's, eventually it gets to the bottom person. And if that person doesn't know anything, they at least say, thanks for calling. We'll be right back to you. Right. And they just close the loop on it. And so, yes, I understand that you're in a listings meeting with a client. You're not going to say, please wait, let me take this phone call. I get that. But find a way to hand that off to somebody else in your organization, or even do it with other next home agents in your market, and just do contact share. Like, hey, if I'm busy, can you take my incoming calls? If you're busy, I'll take yours, and then we'll sort it out on the back end, right? But making people wait is death. 51% in my new book, The Time to Win. 51% of customers. I want everybody to listen to this, okay? 51% of customers will hire whoever contacts them first, regardless of price.
51%.
So knowing that, why would you not engineer your business to be first? Whatever it takes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you balance that? Because I believe you, and I'm ridiculously intense about response times and stuff like that. It gets me in trouble sometimes. But how do you balance that with there's this need to I want to dig. I'm a real estate professional. My client reached out, or an agent reached out to me. I kind of know the answer, but I'm not 100%.
Yeah.
How do you balance perfection or the need to be accurate and speed? Because those two things have some natural tension to them. How do you balance that?
You don't. So here's how you do it. And I totally get the point. It happens all the time, not just in real estate. I get questions all the time about business, about tequila, about whatever. And I don't know the answer. I got to look it up, or I got to ask somebody, or I got to figure it out, or I got to call a client, or whatever. What most people do, overwhelmingly so, Keith, is they get an inquiry, then they go manifest the answer, whatever they have to do, right? They ask somebody. And then once they have the answer, which could be hours or days, then they're like, hey, here's what you needed to know. Stop doing that.
Right.
Because the entire time that you're figuring it out, the person who asked the question is freaking out.
Right.
Because they don't know you're working on it.
Right. You didn't tell them.
And so, look, this happens all. I know this happens to you, James, right? You send somebody an email, you don't hear back for like a day or two. You're like, wait a second, did that go to spam? Did I attach something that sent it to spam? Are they on vacation but didn't set out of office? Are they mad at me? Should I follow up the email with a phone call? Or does that make me seem sad and desperate? This is the psychology that people have now.
Yeah.
They don't assume that you got it and you're working on it. They assume you didn't get it and you're not working on it. And so what you want to do is, I'm telling you, always do this. And not just in business. I do this with my wife, my kids, my mailman, my friends. There's a name for it. We talk about it in the book. It's called respond without answers. Respond without answers. So what you do, somebody asks you anything, you're like, great question. So good, in fact, I got to look up how old Cher is, and I'm going to do that, and then I'll let you know. Yeah. The second that you say, I got it, it goes off of their to-do list, and they put it on your to-do list.
Sure.
And 2 good things happen. 1, the perception of how fast you are goes way up. And number 2, secret tip, it actually buys you more time to respond.
Sure.
Because we actually studied this extensively in the research for the book. This is really about brain science more so than speed. Time to response is psychologically more powerful than time to resolution.
Interesting.
Say that again.
Time to response is psychologically more powerful than time to resolution.
Man, that's so important.
The fact that you need to know something and how can I learn it is the one that nags at you, not whether you get an answer in 1 day versus 2 days.
What's interesting is Keith and I have been on this AI trip for a bit, and Keith's been at a conference the past few days as well, and he's been sending me stuff where I feel like the world's going to end. But anyways,
it's going to be fine, James. I promise.
But we've been doing a lot of research on it. Yeah, Jay and I are in the same boat. We're like, this could go a lot of ways.
Fine.
By the way,
I'm not trying to say fine.
Look,
yeah.
it's either the world's over and then who cares, or it's not. So let's go ahead and act as if it's not
everything is awesome.
Yeah. But my point was, there's some really interesting apps that I think people could do or download and start using. And if you think about it, we're all going to have a personal assistant that can do this quick response time.
No doubt.
Like I love some of the apps they're building where it's using your location and it can see that you're driving to an appointment and you're going to be 25 minutes late based upon an accident that just occurred. And the system reaches out to your client. Teaches, says, hey, I'm running 25 minutes late. There's an accident right in front of me. This is the ETA. Do you want to reschedule? Is it good? Like all of that, to your point, can happen behind the scenes. Yep. That's the great part of where AI can kick in and do things for you that you can't pick up your phone because you don't want to be in an accident too. Like there's so much incredible stuff coming with it. And then there's Terminator. So,
that's either going to happen or it's not. There's nothing we can do on this podcast to impact that.
Nope.
So I'm going to choose to not worry about it too much. But I do want to teach businesses, what's real and what's fake. But I think it's certainly something that Nexthome can do, or even on this podcast, is to say, okay, here are some practical AI use cases and even tools that we think make sense for people in this world. And here's the list, and we're going to keep it up to date every week.
There's something behind that. I think that it's. Everybody we talk to about AI is, and everyone knows there's going to be lots of great things and probably bad things from it. It's going to be what it's going to be. But it's agents that are AI empowered agents are going to be really the key in this.
Huge. And at some point, the initial, especially as a buyer, the initial kind of, hey, narrow this down. Let's get it down to a handful of properties, whatever. That's not going to happen with human beings. People will not do that. You will say, you'll have a forum that says, okay, we want 3 to 4 bedrooms, we want outdoor space, we want an eat-in kitchen, we want home office, we want fenced yard, whatever. And then your digital avatar will actually do previews with the agent's digital avatar. And then they're going to come to a semifinalist list, and then that's going to go to the real person. So the entire first and probably second touch point between buyer and agent will not be with human beings, and that's going to happen like as soon as next year. It's already happening in dating apps. This thing, Keith? Did you see this? So there's
why are you bringing me up? Dating
apps? Evidence would suggest. So,
babe, if you're listening, Jay's just making conversation. All right, continue.
There are multiple dating apps now. Build your own. Avatar and you answer some questions, which builds like a chat bot, right? So it's like Keith's virtual chat bot. Yeah. And then everybody else has one on the dating app. And then the first 2 dates, like your avatar goes on virtual date.
Oh, Jesus.
People's avatars. Like, and I'm not even kidding. And then if the robots get along, right? If the robots have chemistry, then the robot says, hey, Keith, the robot of this real person, Nancy, seems pretty dope. You guys should actually meet. So like the first and second dates, which is the awkward phase of courtship, obviously, although it's been a while since I have done that, but I'm told first and second dates are totally virtual. And then only when it's third date, like, this actually feels like it's going to go right, do the people get involved. This is happening literally today.
I just want to be clear.
You're reading the transcripts of your first 2 dates to determine if you want to go on a third one?
No, you don't have to do it. No, not even that. The robot decides. The robot says, I already took those. No, she's not good for you. No transcript. Yeah.
All of this just went, we're going to wrap the show up here.
The robot is swiping right.
This just basically proved the point that my friend Rob Hahn always talks about, like the downfall of society and sex bots. Basically, we're moving towards this world. So you're saying there's virtual robots dating and deciding who we want to be with. I'm going to go back.
Already exists.
I now feel old. I'm going to leave it at that with that. Keith, do the final question to wrap this up, because
this
is
is
going to
how
go
we
down a weird
close
road.
every show,
So,
Jay.
Yeah.
If you were an agent or a brokerage, what's the one thing you would implement today to help your business for the rest of this year?
Apparently AI dating.
Yeah. There's a lot of answers to that. I'm trying to think what is doable today.
Yeah.
I would probably do, and I talked about this when I saw you last. I would probably start with a got it audit. And a got it audit is where you actually figure out, like, how long does it take? So we've talked about the power of responsiveness and how today people interpret responsiveness as respect, which is critically important in real estate. And a lot of agents, and I know because I'm personal friends with several agents actually, they all think they're as fast as they possibly can be. But then I ask them, okay, well, how long does it take you to do X, Y, or Z? And they don't know.
Right.
They just have, again, anecdotes. So unless you know how long it actually takes today, how do you know that you're doing it well, and how can you possibly get better? So what I would start today, and it will take a little time to figure this out, is literally keep a spreadsheet, post-it note, whatever, and literally measure how long does it take to get back to people? How long does it take to set an appointment? How long does it take to do a closing? Like, how long do all these things take? Because until you know that, you're just making shit up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's great
it's
advice.
interesting. It's a good one.
Yeah.
The time and motion study, all of those things are relevant for people to go through right now. So
100%.
All right, my friend. Well, I learned a lot today. I found about some stuff on dating apps I didn't want to know. So
I'll send you a link.
Interesting. No, I'm good, but thank you. We'll put your books in the show description. Your podcast, always great to talk with you, my friend.
We'll do it again.
You're inspiring me to get more into tequila, especially after having this hour show. So
Let's do it. Yeah.
all right, my friend. We'll look forward to having you back soon. Thanks again.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Jay.
Bye-bye.
Yep.
Talk soon.
It's our job to say out loud what everybody's only thinking to themselves. It's your job to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode.